This is East Idaho Newsmakers with Nate Eaton.
Thanks for being with us today. If your lights are on in your home right now and you're watching in Idaho Falls, you have this woman to thank.
Wow.
Jackie Flowers is with us. She is general manager of Idaho Falls Power, at least for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
You have announced that you are leaving for a new job. Tell us about this new position.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't take credit for the lights being on because I've got an amazing team at Idaho Falls Power who actually does keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually it's followed by, and if your power is not on, please call Idaho Falls Power and they'll be right over.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that introduction, Nate. I've accepted a position in Tacoma, Washington. I will be director/CEO of Tacoma Public Utilities. They have an electric utility that's celebrating, their electric and water utilities are celebrating their 125th year this year. And then they have a short track rail in the Port of Tacoma that is celebrating its 100th year this year. And so all three of those, water, electric, and rail, will be the department that I will run. So it's a big department, and it's a big opportunity for me. A very talented team there. And one of the things I'm excited about is they have a lot of interest in issues in the Northwest, much like we do at Idaho Falls Power, since we're a Bonneville Power Administration customer. So it'll be an opportunity to still, continue to work on things that I've enjoyed working on here in Idaho Falls, and have opportunity to even work still with some of the staff at Idaho Falls in policy issues and things like that in the Northwest. But then I'll have the added dimension of water, which I have managed water utilities before, and rail, which will be completely new to me. So
A new challenge
Yep.
and something exciting,
right,
I'm sure.
exactly.
You've been here 12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. And, interestingly enough, when I came here 12 years ago, I hadn't worked in the electric utility industry either. I had been a public works director. I'd managed other public-owned utilities, more traditional to city, water, sewer, sanitation, solid waste, things like that, in a regional water system. But then I came here, and it was the first time in the electric industry. I remember distinctly the conversation with Jared Furman and him asking me how that was going to go, and something like, I think I'll bring donuts to the first meeting when I meet the staff. So, even though I don't know, the specifics of their trade and their profession, I will respect them and learn from them. And then I told him I promised not to touch anything, and he thought that was kind of funny.
Well, what brought you here then?
Yeah, it was just the opportunity, similar thing. I'm a native from Wyoming, and so I, lived close by, and happened to come over here on vacation. I think it was the year before the position had opened, or at least caught my eye. I spent a week in the Tetons. Oddly enough, I was born and raised in Wyoming and had never made it to the Tetons. I guess we vacationed other places, fell in love with the area, and just had this opening come up, and I thought, well, water and power are similar, especially when you generate power from water. And I had experience with dams, much different than these. They were mountain dams for drinking water purposes, and so I put in for it. And I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity. Mayor Furman took a gamble on me, I guess, if you will, and some of the folks that were part of the interview team, Doug Hunter, general manager of UAMPS, was actually on the interview team that selected me, so it's interesting that our relationship goes back to when I started here. Bob Mooney, who was a longtime advisor to the City of Idaho Falls in transmission and power, the generation planning, he was on the interview team. He passed away a year ago, and I really have felt that loss. So he was somebody that I could pick up the phone as I was, cutting my teeth in the industry and understanding what was going on. And he was there. And when I looked at this opportunity at Tacoma, I thought, if only I could call Bob.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be a great experience. But so I put in for it, and it's been just such an incredible opportunity. And I can't speak highly enough about the talent of the folks at Idaho Falls Power. It's been one of my great honors to work with a team that has so much talent and passion for what they do. They're professionals in their trade, every one of them, and I just have, words can't even express the respect that I have for them. And they're working with me. Anything that we've taken on, the industry is so dynamic, and when I think about what were the hot issues when I started 12 years ago versus what we deal with now and what's on our radar now, it's changed so much. The industry has.
What were those hot issues?
I actually, when I was hired, it was in July of 2006, and one of the first tasks, and former councilman Mike Leto and Tom Halley were also on the interview team that selected me. So it's been really fun to work with those folks this whole time. But one of the first tasks I was assigned was we had a bond election to buy into the third unit at Intermountain Power Project in Delta, Utah, a coal plant. And the measure was going to vote in November. So they looked at me and said, your job is this election in November.
Make it happen.
I was new to the community. I didn't know anybody, had some great assistance from some movers and shakers in the community that connected me with people that were important to know, and just got the dog and pony show ready and hit the road. And we passed that bond. I can't remember what the exact count was. I want to say it was like 200 votes over the supermajority required. I know I had vacations scheduled for the week after, or right after the bond. In fact, the next morning I got up and left town and got a phone call from Councilman Leto, who said, Flowers, I wouldn't have believed it, but you managed to do it. And so now look at where we are with industry, with coal, and coal plants retiring prematurely because of air quality regulations and other things. And there's been a substantial investment in renewable energy. So how we generate power has changed dramatically. Technology in the system and the grid modernization initiatives, none of those were on the radar. We didn't talk about cybersecurity risks then, and now that occupies so much of what we do.
Was there even online billing back then?
No. So we were a little late to the online billing because we had to update city software to get to the point where we could send paperless bills, which, by the way, I'm going to put a plug in for that. If you aren't on paperless billing, get on it. Get your bills in your email. I know most people get their bills from other services through the email, so we do that now. We rolled out that initiative. I think it was 18 months ago, roughly. So it was a software upgrade. So no, we didn't have conversations about rooftop solar. We didn't have conversations about electric vehicles. We were starting to see some of the two-way communicable protection systems. So where you could do remote dispatch of different things in the electric grid, the distribution system itself. We have much more of that today. And with the cybersecurity overlay, of course. And then reliability standards. The federal government has put out a substantial amount of reliability standards that we have to comply with. And those weren't on the radar at all in 2006. So there's been a lot that has changed in the industry. And so when I think about, from this position and thinking moving into rail, where I don't have any experience in rail, I draw a lot from how did I make it work here when I had the same shortcomings in the electric space. Really, it wouldn't have mattered if I would have had a lot of experience in electric, because so much has changed that it really has been an evolution process. But when we've taken on initiatives, partnering in the Smart Grid Demonstration Project, the staff's been amazing. Whatever challenge we put out there, they roll up their sleeves and they make it happen, and they make it work. They always joke about how it hasn't been quiet since I got here. Maybe they're all thinking, whew. But it's been a good team.
So growing up in Wyoming, going to college, and did you ever expect that you would be doing this, and did you want to do this? What were your career goals?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I've had opportunity to reflect on that a little bit more recently. There's a groundswell of effort and focus on women in public power, because there aren't very many of us, and women in engineering, and there aren't very many of those. And so I've had a lot of opportunity to speak to young girl groups, professional women, with that same kind of question. So it's really, if you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, I probably would have stumbled on it a little bit more than I have now, because I've been on this journey. When I was in high school, I was very interested. I did some independent study on water, and so I was very interested in water issues and water supply and availability, and so that really was what piqued my interest to do engineering. I didn't know what engineers did, and I didn't think I was that great at math, but I must have been, because I made it through. So I proceeded to do civil engineering, and no, I wouldn't have even had the utility industry on my radar. I did work initially with a state Department of Water Resources, on water issues that way, and then ultimately moved into public works, which construction is an area that I've always really enjoyed. So I like to build things, and that's an interesting opportunity within both public works, general utility space, and electric utility. So for me, my true love was water, and whether you're generating power from the water or you're cleaning the water to make sure it's clean for drinking or for discharge purposes. We just have a finite amount of water available on the planet, and so it does behoove us to take care of it and use it wisely. So that's ultimately what my hook was into the industry. Sadly, there are fewer women engineers in school today than there were when I was in school 30 years ago.
It's interesting because you'd think it'd be the other way around.
Right. I was shocked to learn that. And I really had lost touch. In fact, the first time somebody said, we would like you to come speak on the panel at Women in Public Power, I'm like, oh, that's right, I am a woman. Because I'm surrounded by, men all the time. And to their credit, I don't notice it. Mm-hmm. They've been great mentors. And, when you're a woman in engineering or a woman in the power industry, you have to have men that are willing to mentor you, or you don't have mentors. Mm-hmm. So that's an area that has become more of a focus of mine. But when I started to have some of these conversations and I looked at the statistics, I was blown away that there aren't more women. And really, I think part of it is the engineering field. I joke about engineers all the time because I am one, and I say I'm a retired engineer. The electrical engineers at Idaho Falls Power formally disowned me when I hung a picture without a level in the office. So I said, that's how you know that I've
My dad's an engineer,
retired.
So,
so we don't sell what we do. It's not exciting. Part of it is just our training teaches us to be very methodical, very solution oriented, think about problems. We take very seriously the ethics of the work, and so that overlays in the personalities where they feel a little flat, and we're not excited about it. And when I think about the opportunity that young people have, men or women, to make a difference in the world, in communities, engineering is absolutely 100% that. So people that want to make a difference and make their community better, make their region better, make their country better, make the world better, engineering is where you do that. We just have to be more passionate about it so people can see that there's opportunities like that. I mean, you think about other parts of the world that don't have access to clean water and that don't have power, the amenities that we take for granted, that's going to get resolved because of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we just have to be better at telling our story and being more of a exciting environment to work in, and hopefully everybody can make a difference in that regard, and it's an area I'm definitely more plugged into. So I was the first woman at Idaho Falls Power, and I don't get hung up on this a lot. It's more percolated up in recent years because it's been an area of focus in the industry. I was the first woman board chair for UAMPS, the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, and I'll be the first woman to be permanently appointed to lead Tacoma. So it just seems to be happening, and maybe that's a sign that I need to embrace my role at giving that message and maybe giving some inspirational elements to young girls that think about it. I have a son who's studying engineering, so I don't want to eliminate the men, but there's definitely opportunities there too. So I'd feel like I'd failed if I didn't have at least one engineer for a kid. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. And how many other children do you
I have two.
Okay.
So my son is he's studying mechanical engineering at the University of Idaho. He just finished his junior year, and then my daughter just graduated from high school at Compass Academy, and she's going to go to University of Idaho. Also, she's studying medical sciences. She wants to be an emergency room physician.
So you guys have embraced Idaho. It sounds like
University
of Idaho.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do they think of the move?
They're excited. I mean, so they're both going to be gone. I'll actually be closer to them. Not that they want me hanging out a lot, but I might a little more. But they're pretty game for adventure. Gavin has worked at last summer at the Idaho National Lab. He got an internship, and he actually had an opportunity to come back. But this summer he's working over in the Boise area. So it probably hit him a little harder just because he thought, in his mind he could see coming back here, which he may still. It's a great place, and with the opportunities at the Idaho National Lab, it's there's going to be continued good opportunities for jobs here and good meaningful work in the industry, and that's. Another piece to me that has been really rewarding is the opportunity to interface with the lab on projects. So, Idaho Falls will always hold a special place to my heart. I raised my kids here. And so I'll be back. I'll be back to visit. I have property over in Teton Valley. I'll probably retire over here. So, I feel like I have roots. I'm just going to go push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit for a while. Yeah.
So one of the questions that we get asked sometimes, especially with the Henry's Creek fire a few years ago, is about the windmills.
Yeah.
And let's clarify it for people that don't know. Idaho Falls Power does not own those windmills.
Correct. And certainly we don't get. So there's two realities to electric generation. There is the path of the electrons. So the electrons flow into the valley of Idaho Falls. And then there's the paper trail of who actually buys the wind energy. So the windmills that are closest on the ridge are, last I knew, under contract for utilities in California. Their development was third party. It was not developed by a specific utility to sell where there was demand in California, where there was renewable energy requirements. And so that's what led to that. But again, the electrons actually physically flow here. So, Rocky Mountain Power, Pacificor, as the balancing authority, they have to deal with the balancing of when the wind blows and doesn't, and making sure you have adequate supply on the system. So, we still deal with the physics of that and how the electrons flow. The paper trail, as long as you can show you have a transmission path contractually from a generation source to where you're going to use the electricity, and there's capacity on that path, you can buy energy from that regard. So transmission often becomes one of the first fatal flaws, if you will, of developing a project or investing in a project. If you don't have a transmission path to get the energy from the source to your door, you can't buy it, essentially is how it works. So now, however, there are, I want to say it's 32 windmills at Kemp's Crossing, which is actually owned by the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, of which we are a member. And we do have 3 megawatts output from that through a power sales contract with UAMPS. So that set of windmills was developed by public power entities that are partnering with UAMPS. I think it's in 7 western states, 6 or 7 western states. Are taking the energy. The majority of those, well, there's a fair amount of that wind that's going to Lower Valley Energy, which serves Jackson, Afton, Swan Valley. There's a fair amount of that goes to Truckee Donner, right on the California-Nevada border. They invested a fair amount in that. And then a number of Utah utilities that have invested in that. So we get a little bit of wind from that particular one. But the ones that are on the ridge that, really you can see from the valley floor, contractually those are out, yeah. And it's really just an economics question, right? Yeah. So it's a supply and demand. When they had regulatory requirements, I think when it first was built, if memory serves me right, it was something on the neighborhood of 16 cents a kilowatt is what they were paying. I don't know if that's what the contracts are today. Our generation from the wind costs 7 cents a kilowatt. And when you think about our wholesale residential rates, just a little over 6, that gives you an idea of magnitude of, why they sold it to California. They can get a better price for it. So, yeah. Whereas the wind that was developed by UAMPS, they're a public power entity. So much like Idaho Falls Power, we're not for profit. We set the rates to cover the costs. So likewise, when they develop a project, they're not for profit. They develop the project to cover the costs, which includes, construction, operation, maintenance, and debt. There's still some debt on those facilities. So that's why you see the divergence between the different rates. But
what's been the main thing you've learned being the head of Idaho Falls Power?
Well, I will say I've kind of stumbled it almost feels like the swan song or something. I don't know, it's a little weird to have people say, you've done so much for the city. It's not just me. I mean, I have a team of folks that I work with that I couldn't do anything without. And I don't know if I've learned that necessarily here, but it's certainly been reinforced. Folks will say, well, leadership starts at the top, and your philosophy and your priorities will set the direction. And maybe that's the case, but really, to me, it's about, collaborating with people, empowering them to be their best, and making sure that everybody's rowing the same direction. And that's really, you can get siloed. The organization was maybe a little bit siloed when I first got here, and part of that was there had been about a year gap in leadership while they were working with interim folks. And so, you just really have to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And it's the personalities, right? And tapping into the experts, recognizing when you have a particular skill set with somebody and making sure that they're able to really shine with that expertise and lean on it. And that's the biggest thing, I think. I've had a lot of lessons learned. Some of them have been humble lessons, and some of them have been very gratifying. But really, I'd say that probably the top thing is just, working with. And so when I think back to starting in 2006 and stepping into the utility, not only new to the utility, but new to the industry, you know, I instantly had to count on the people around me and recognize that you know, you give folks respect, that's how you earn respect. And so I worked really hard to make sure that, you know, they understood I knew my limitations and that I was there to work with them and support them. So it's been a great run. I've had a great time with the team and really learned a lot from them.
What will you miss the most?
Oh, the people, definitely. I mean, both at the utility and in the city in general. I've had a lot of opportunity to work with different organizations. The Downtown Association, I shouldn't name them, I'm going to get in trouble with the chamber, the economic development groups, right? INL, and then of course, you know, a passion of mine has been getting involved with Rotary and Arts Council and the Symphony, and those have all been, you know, really very rewarding opportunities to interface with a diverse set of folks in Idaho Falls that maybe you wouldn't if you just stuck in the box of I do only electric utility. It really gave me a perspective to understand what people know or don't know about us. And you know, the reality is you don't want your customers to have to worry about their electricity. You're not doing your job then. It should be seamless. And I say that and I'm gonna go, please don't go out now lights. It does happen on occasion. Yeah. Usually if I've jinxed it. You don't want people to have to think about it, but what you wanna do is be able to be in those conversations when they have questions like the windmills, or you know, when they want to know what's going on with whatever power plant. One of the big questions I'm always asked when I'm out about is, so I see the water going out of the gate, not through the power plant. Is that power plant's off all the time? No, it just means we have more water than we can push through the plant right now. So, you know, having that touch point to help people understand their curiosities, I think has been meaningful, and it pays back. You know, people then have a better appreciation for the utility and the role it plays in the community. So I will definitely miss the people, and it's, you know, been across the board. I think Idaho Falls has been a great place to raise my kids. It's been, you know, really a good experience. They've had great opportunities here, and so just across the board, I would say. I learned something from everybody I meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll continue to do so in Tacoma.
Yeah.
We wish you good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Jackie Flowers, she's been the general manager of Idaho Falls Power for 12 years, not 20 years. And she, her last day will be July 20th as she takes this new role in Tacoma, and maybe we'll see you around here at the duck race or something.
There you go.
In a few years.
There you go. Sounds great. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
watching.
you.
Have a good week.